Okay, thank you again for coming to today's AT Reuse Best Practice session. Today's focus is on liability because that's generally the biggest concern for many organizations who thought about doing reuse but haven't actually pursued it because they're afraid of lawsuits and other things that may be sort of, too much for them to handle. So a lot of organizations are very reluctant to do reuse for their organizations because of that. I'm going to sort of introduce also Amy Liu, who's on the teleconference. She's from the shop at CIL Berkeley, and so she's going to help me co-facilitate some of the topic discussions today, since they have a reuse, center at in their organization. So before I start, I wanted to, at the end today, it's more of a a time and a place for us to talk about what some of the things we're doing and in terms of reuse. And so I would like to sort of kind of go around. If you could just introduce your name and the organization where you're from, and whether your organization is doing reuse or not. Whether it's just, a closet, a small tiny closet, or your garage, or anything like that, because reuse comes in all different forms and office space or no office space. So if you could just go ahead and just introduce yourselves, that way people will get to know each other. We will hope to build sort of a collaboration, a network of people who can really be able to share best practice ideas. And so it would be good to know where you guys are from and what you're doing in terms of reuse. And if you're not, that's totally fine as well. This is why, we want to have sessions like this too. So I'm going to start off with Deborah Ingram. She's from Monterey County, and she has a medical equipment reuse program. She also said, I am a resource specialist with Parents Helping Parents, a parent of a 36-year-old with CP, San Luis Obispo. She does AT out of her house at UCP San Luis Obispo. Welcome, Deborah. Thanks for sharing and writing it. I'm going to pass it on to the next Deborah.
Really, our program's fairly new, and we have a lot of medical equipment, and we're trying to figure out the whole liability issues and best practices. So I'm really excited about this seminar.
Oh, great. Thank you. And let's go move on to Eddie Lopez.
Good morning, everyone. This is Eddie Lopez. I am the Assistant Technology Specialist in Independent Living Resources Solano in Contra Costa County. We do have offices in Fairfield and Concord. We do have a reuse program in both offices, and we accept donated items, and then we distribute it to anybody who is in need of it, low-income seniors or people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Jorge?
Hi, this is Jorge from Central Call Center for Independent Living. And at CIL, we do not have a reuse program, but a lot of my consumers have benefited from reuse. I have been able to get equipment from other agencies that do reuse. And today, about an hour ago, I just connected Deborah Ingram to this conference call. Her program has several medical equipment that they let consumers in Monterey County use. So as you can see, even though we don't do reuse, we still collaborate.
Thanks, Jorge. That's great to hear. Sam Moore.
Hello, everyone. I'm the AT coordinator for Rolling Start in San Bernardino. We cover we're the ILC for San Bernardino County, Inyo, and Mono counties. We do have an office in Victorville, and we have a reuse program here. We take in donations, clean up the equipment, and then distribute them as necessary and needed to our consumers. That's it. Thank you.
This is Deborah McNulty.
Hi, Deborah. How are you? So do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
I'm a resource specialist at Parents Helping Parents in Atascadero, California. We're connected to UCP and SLO. San Luis Obispo. I'm also a parent of a 36-year-old quadriplegic. And so I've been doing reuse out of my garage for a long time because I do in-home care. But I've been trying to use the resources at UCP also.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Virginia, and I do intake care at the Health and Community Solutions Center in Modesto, and we do not have a program, but we do have a lot of people that come in and ask questions about different things. And I just want to inform myself so that way when they come in asking about this, I don't have to tell them I don't know, or I can be able to refer them to an agency that does this, or be able to tell them how it works if they ask.
Okay, great, thanks. I know many of you guys are probably new to reuse, or as some of you guys share, you guys are sort of doing it out of your own house, which is great. And it's kind of interesting to know that we do have different reuse programs throughout the state of California. And most of the things that have been collected have been durable medical equipment. And I think many of you know that there are many benefits of doing reuse. You know, there's, with insurance now being so high and increasing DME deductibles, a lot of people are having a hard time accessing AT reuse equipment. And so with reuse, it helps provide those free and low-cost refurbished equipment when people aren't able to get the insurance to pay for it, and it makes it more accessible to a larger population. It saves money for both the consumer and the state, and if for those especially who only need it for a very short time, it's a very beneficial thing to have when you just need it to get out of the hospital, like a walker. You just borrow a walker and then use it for a month or two, and then give it back to the reuse program. And of course, the best thing about it that it's green for the environment. So those are some of the benefits. I know many of you are probably already aware of that. Amy, can you share about yourself too?
Sure. So my name is Amy Liu, and I'm the Assistive Technology Coordinator here at Center for Independent Living in Berkeley. And let's see, we have been doing officially reuse program for almost a year or so now. I mean, we always have matched people up with various equipment in the past, but in terms of doing it officially with policy in place, or different process that kind of I guess has more of a systematic system. It's been about a year, and I have just came on board back in July as an AT coordinator again. I was doing that a few years ago. So I would be glad to share with people what we do here, and by all means, we're not perfect. And I would be also glad to hear from what others have to say about some of the centers that already also have the AT reuse program, and we can all learn from each other.
Thanks, Amy. Siva said that she's from ILRC and she doesn't have a reuse program. So Amy is going to help co-facilitating this session of the topics. What I'd like to hear just in general is what are some of the concerns that your center is facing in terms of liability. If you can just open your mic and share, or you can, that way we can be more specific about what we're going to discuss today. Does anyone want to have any concerns? Ziva says concerns with liability if the device we give the consumer fails. Okay, awesome. Then we have Sam. Sam? Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, we have a program in place, and generally with liability we address with legal notification and have them sign documents that detail that the item is in as-is condition. We clean up the item, we sterilize it, but they sign off and sign a liability form when they take the the device home to alleviate our center from any future issues with that. And it seems to work pretty well. A lot of our consumers seem to understand that we're taking in donations, and we tried to be as careful as possible with them, but to be sure and to be safe, we ensure that they understand that they are liable for anything that happens.
Thank you, Sam. That's excellent. That's some of the things we're going to be covering to the library release form today. Siva says, thank you, Sam, and not enough space to store the devices. We will talk about that storage in the next other sessions, future sessions. Today we'll just cover just the liability. But Ziva, hold on to that thought, and hopefully we can bring that up in the in future sessions. Anyone else want to talk about any liability their organization might be concerned about?
Yeah, liability is always a concern, especially with the motorized or wheelchairs. But technically, people kind of take stuff from us like a garage sale. What's your liability? And so that's what I'm interested in, is something that's a little more technical than a bathtub seat or something real standard. A liability form would be good. And so I'm interested in finding out about that. Also, I'm interested in doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy, so that's a whole different thing with the liability forms. So, yeah, that's a major concern of ours, but we really don't have one.
Okay, thanks, Deborah. So, as some of us have summed it up, it pretty much is basically how do you give out equipment if equipment fails, you don't want to be sued. So we're going to kind of talk about that today. So what are some of the strategies to overcome liability challenges? So basically, I'm going to have Amy here sort of talk about how they've done it in the past with the shop at CIL. So Amy, go ahead.
Okay, so basically when we get donations in, we actually go through, I kind of just sum it up in the outline form of 10 steps program that we go through. And, like I said, this might not be the best way depending on the center, but in our case, this actually works quite well. So when we first get a donation call, we actually will see what this equipment is, and then depending on the space, we can't really tell them yes and no right away if it's something bigger. I mean, if it's things like cane and walkers and so forth, it's easier to say yes. But things like hospital beds. There was a point we had 3 hospital beds, and I don't know, you guys can imagine, they can take up quite a bit of space. And so after we have a little better idea of what this donation is, then we'll check the space and availability to store it. Then we will actually also look into find a way to get it here, because sometimes, especially if it's a large item, we'll have either somebody go pick it up. We actually have a van here that can pick up large item, but we also need to look at whether or not, if it's something that repairs a lot of work, we might not really want to drive, all the way to somewhere. So basically, we will do a little bit of an arrangement to try to figure out while we're dealing with the space issue. And then, so once we get picked up, once the equipment gets picked up, we will actually tag it so we have an idea of the status on that particular item. Because we have quite a bit of item here. But then a lot of times if we don't tag it, it's hard for us to know whether something has been looked at. Now, our place is a little bit unique because we also have a wheelchair repair shop. So what does that mean is that if it's anything fall into that area of either it's a wheelchair, motorized wheelchair, manual wheelchair, or scooter, basically we will have the wheelchair repair tech take a close look at it. I mean, I can only say, oh, this works from what I can see, but if there's anything more in depth needs to be fixed and whatnot, that's kind of leave it up to our wheelchair person to figure out, and this is when the cost is involved when we try to determine a price for a specific item, especially if something that needs to be fixed, then we'll have to tie that into part of the cost. And then if things like Camo or King or so forth doesn't really require a lot of work, then the cost will be much lower, or it could even be free depending on the condition. So after we determined the cost and related thing for an item, that would include examining it, then basically what we're going to do is this device will be ready to be posted on the AT Exchange. And then so when people either see it on the AT Exchange website, or when I know certain items available, then when my consumer calls in, and I'll be able to match this particular item up depending on their needs. And then so once this particular item is matched up and the person is ready to come pick it up, we'll go over all the different forms that need to be signed. Most of them are the agency-related forms, such as the general intake, the confidentiality form, the grievance procedure, and a whole bunch of other ones. And the most important one that's related to our AT Reuse Center, which we'll talk a little more in depth, is the waiver and liability form. So after they sign all the forms and we explain to them about anything that they get from us, it's kind of like on their own discretion. If something happens, we're not really responsible for the liability part. And then after that, they understand and they sign the form and they can take it and start using it. So that's kind of how we do our our AT reuse equipment. So I would be glad to hear from some other centers if you have any kind of policy in place or steps, and we can kind of compare notes.
Yes, thanks, Amy. Actually, we're going to pull up the CIL Waiver form. Alan, can you do that, please? So in front of your screen, you should see the form that Amy was mentioning earlier about how CIL form. Amy, right now we're pulling up the CIL Waiver and Release Liability Form. Can you kind of go into specific some of the things that are important for the organizations to think about?
So basically, when we try to explain to them about the liability part, we need to let them know that point one says that there's a risk of injury from the use of this particular equipment, especially we're talking about wheelchair or maybe even say motor wheelchair, power wheelchair or scooter, because it has moving parts, and then they need to be addressed that if something, they don't know how to operate it, this can cause quite a bit of injury. So we need to let them know that, we're just didn't exaggerating. I mean, it could happen. It could be, bodily injury, including death, property damage. And actually, property damage is a very easy, thing to happen. It actually happened in our office. A few years ago. It's not anything about related to our AT equipment, but it has to do with one of our colleagues here in our office. One day, he claimed that his chair just became demonic. And then so this chair, basically the power chair, just ran through the door. I wasn't there to witness it, but apparently took the whole office door off of it and whatnot. So that's something we kind of need to let them know, especially if they're getting like a power chair or scooter. And basically let them understand that we are not responsible for all this thing once they sign the waiver. And then so the second point, we also need to let them know this person who signs for the waiver form are responsible, I guess, for this particular transaction. And also they're not going to sue us or, I guess, file a lawsuit against us if anything above that we mentioned, because we already explained this to them, and then basically they're responsible as whoever that signed for this. And we basically kind of guide them through at the same time. We also want to give them the support. If they have any questions about the chair or whatever they get, we're willing to help. But if it does any damage or whatnot, we want to make it very clear that this waiver liability form is protecting both our agency as well as themselves.
Thanks, Amy. What about the grievance form? Alan, can you pull that up too, so people have something to also look into? So I know you guys, CIL, you have a waiver form and you also have a grievance form. Why do you have both forms, Amy?
Well, it's a different thing, because for the waiver and liability, it's more specifically geared towards the equipment itself. But the grievance procedure, it's mainly about our service that we offer. So this is more of our standard grievance procedure. It's not just only for the AT reuse. This is for all the services that CIL offers. So basically, it's kind of like guarantee them that if somehow I didn't, I guess, deliver a good service to them, that they have someone they can actually go up to complain about or to kind of show their concern. So the grievance procedure basically kind of let them know that there's a way for them to air out their frustration. So, it could be anything related to, if somehow they got a mismatched chair and different things like that, and they have a way to let somebody know. But at the same time, when I try to match something up with my consumer, I want to make sure that they understand some of the kind of consequences depending on how they are willing to, cooperate. And one of the example I was sharing with Shannon yesterday was about a gentleman who wanted a wheelchair but has never used one and could not come into the office and wanted to get a chair. So I need to explain to him that in order for you to come and get a chair that fits and that works the best for you, you should have to kind of come and see it and get custom fitted into the chair. If you don't, then I cannot guarantee I'll be able to find a chair that fits you. So that's the part I need to make it very clear and let them understand. So if somehow, he complains or he has problems and so forth, he can still talk to my supervisor and whatnot, but then at the same time, I already explained it to him about the process when getting used equipment. So I think to just add to that, the grievance procedure is mainly a protection for the consumer that we serve.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions or for Amy about the 2 forms she showed, or any questions about the shop? Basically, as you know, the CIL shop, they have forms for consumers to sign before they give out the equipment, as Amy was sharing. And then the other important aspects of components that are important for reducing any kind of liability would be having policies and procedures in place. The AT network has we have a checklist, indicators of quality kind of checklist, which we'll show you later on in the AT network reuse page in the CATRC website where they're located. But it's a checklist where you can kind of say, does my reuse program have this? Does it think about liability issues and concerns? And it's sort of like a scale where you can kind of grade your organization's reuse program in terms of where it's at, and it can help you see where you may need to sort of improve on, but it helps you kind of develop those policies and procedures, because with policies, it helps reduce high risk, areas of concern, and the way to do that is to actually, Alan, can you bring up the policy form? I found some policy forms that may be beneficial for you guys to look into, so that way you can kind of, it doesn't have to be very long or lengthy, but it's just to help you kind of have the basic concepts for your policies and procedures. And so as Alan's pulling up, this is a policy form that I found on the Pass It On Center. And basically, you have a policy number, the policy title, so it would be like AT reuse, for example. And you can kind of write things down. And then basically, you can have a model policy worksheet, the topic, which, whether it be ensuring that the equipment is usable or clean. And you talk about the goal, what the goal would be, making sure that all the equipments are clean, because cleaning is it's a very important part of liability, because if you don't have a clean equipment, oftentimes people may get diseases or things like that if you're giving out like a commode or things like that. So you would establish the goal. Who's affected would be a consumer who's getting the equipment, and you jot down topics, points that should be addressed, and then what the policy would be, whether you can only give out clean equipment or whether you make sure that the consumer knows that the equipment isn't clean, therefore they need to clean it, but you give them instructions on how to clean it as another alternative. And then you go down, Alan. There's a rule of policy match up with the goal. So this is just sort of a form that helps you kind of write ideas down to help you set up some of the policies. And then we'll pull up another procedure form. And procedures are important because it helps you talk about the process and activities necessary to implement the policies, sort of the day-to-day operations, and a step-by-step guidance for basic organizational activities. Again, it's the same thing. You have the number and you have the title, and then you scroll down and you see, topic, like what kind of procedure, as in, like, for example, tagging the equipment, making sure you know which equipment needs batteries, which equipment doesn't need batteries. Why is that important? Is because if the equipment has bad batteries, you don't want to give that out if the consumer can't pay for new batteries. Who's responsible for it? The person in your organization, for example, whether it's the AT technician guy, whether it's you, or whether you have a vendor who would be willing to. Sometimes I've known vendors who are willing to do it for free. If you're helping them advertise for other things or something like that. And then what's the procedure, the steps by steps on how to do it, and the when it needs to be done. and then where, like whether it's in your garage or whether it's in your office closet, or kind of where you clean the equipment example is another place where you can write, and how to do it, like the step-by-step procedures and how to get that procedure that go accomplished. So that's some examples of policy and procedure forms. That is just to help you jot down ideas to still make sure that you're covered, that you've thought of all the different risks that can possibly happen. Okay, Alan, can you close out for me, please? And then I'm going to pull up a couple more liability waiver forms. Actually, I'm going to pull up an example of a completed policy and procedure form. Alan, can you pull up the ATEC form for me, please? It's going to show sort of an example of a policy and procedure form from the ATEC in Southern California. They have it's very simple, but it talks about the overall, I think it's the ATEC one, Alan. I think he's trying to pull it up. It's much more, it kind of shows you what it looks like when it's it's not based on those forms that I showed you earlier, but there's another format that you can see how other organizations have done it in terms of policies and procedures set up in their organization. In the meantime, does anyone have any questions?
Well, I kind of just wanted to add one thing that I kind of forgot to mention about a cleaning procedure in our reuse program here. Before we actually distribute any equipment, if it's all possible, we will actually run it through. We have a hub scrub machine here. It's basically the big pressurized washing machine that will put either commode, walkers, or whatnot into this big machine, so it will get desensitized and washed off before we actually assign any of the equipment out to the potential consumer.
Thanks, Amy. So Alan just pulled up the ATEC loan and reuse program. Alan, if you could scroll down, it talks about the different, could you stop? Okay, there is a program overview. It talks about the different devices that they give out for their reuse, loan and reuse program, like AAC devices, computer, electronic aids, so daily living, ergonomics, cognitive impairment aids, education aids, and durable medical equipment. And it talks about the program breakdown. As you can see, there's sort of AT reuse section. It says ATEC just began the AT reuse portion of the program, and it explains what the goal is and what they're going to be doing. So Alan, can you scroll down some more? And then the staff support, who's going to support the program, the different activities like marketing and outreach. You want to make sure people know that you have a reuse program or you don't. Depends on you. And then there's the repairs, who's going to be doing the repair. Their technology specialist is doing the repair. The storage, they talk about the off-site storage facility, the inventory and database management, and then the website, the ATEC's website on their reuse program. So that's sort of like how it looks like when it's sort of filled out. It's just to give you some idea of what a completed policy and procedure form can look like. Thanks, Alan. If you can close that for me, please. And then I know there was a question Deborah had, is how about when a consumer has developmental delay? Should their living supervisor be included in their waiver? Do the other participants have any feedback on that before I jump in? Like Jorge or Eddie or or Sam?
I guess my question is, do they have the mental capacity to accept the waiver and sign the waiver?
Okay, Sam, did you want to say something?
Generally, our practice is that if there is a question of mental capacity, we contact the person who has been designated as their caregiver or their legal representative for the purpose of signing documents. Usually, in cases of the developmental delay or if there's an issue there already is a person assigned to that oversight. So we contact them and have them review the documents and have that done that way.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Sam.
you.
Great. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to have Alan pull up some resources for you guys to look into. So the first one is the AT Network reuse page. Some of you guys are already familiar with it, but for those who are new, it's the reuse program is a list of all the reuse programs in California. As you can see, it's broken down to Central, Northern, the Bay Area, and Southern California. It has like the name of the reuse program, the center, and the contact information. So it's a good way for you guys to know what other reuse programs are in your area and maybe, have the opportunity to contact them and collaborate or get some really good ideas on what kind of equipment they're collecting or donating or accepting, and that way it's a good opportunity for you to network with other reuse programs. So when you have a chance to check out that webpage, it's on the atnet.org, resources, and then reuse program section. Okay, thanks, Alan. The next one is we're going to go to the California AT Reuse Coalition website. I was earlier talking about the indicators of quality. If you go to resources, click there, and you go to Reuse Center Self-Assessment 2. No, go up, Alan. Alan, go up. It's not quite that. The Reuse Center Self-Assessment 2. If you go there, you should see the California Reuse Program Indicators of Quality. There's a PDF version and a document version that shows, if you click on it, it will show you the questions that can help you prompt some thoughts in terms of writing the your policies and procedures. It's sort of a survey. It's self-assessing your reuse program. And like, does it collect data? Does it, how do you deal with consumers? Things like that. So that's an example of something you can look into when you have the chance. Thanks, Alan. Okay, and then lastly, I wanted to show you the Pass It On Center. This is the National Reuse website. So it basically covers all of the United States, really. And as you go down a little bit, you see that Find the Reuse Location is a map of the United States. So that's another way that it covers nationally. But if you really want to know specific forms that you want to find, like the 2 forms I found on policy and procedure, you go up and you go to knowledge base. You click on knowledge base. Right? You click on that, and then sometimes you look at this and you're like, oh, sometimes the website's a little confusing. So you go to the site search, Alan, if you go to the site search, and you type in liability, for example, you type that in, and then you search for it, and then you find all these forms, how to do, like liability concerns for AT reuse program as an example, how to, look into insurance for reuse programs, because besides giving out equipment, making sure no one sues you, it's important to know that you have the proper insurance to cover yourself. And what are those insurance? Like if you have an organization, you want to make sure that your employees who are lifting the equipment don't injure themselves, and other kind of insurance that if a driver is in the car and they're trying to deliver an equipment, making sure if they get into an accident that they're covered. And making sure that you just have the proper insurance to cover yourself. Most organizations, these programs I know of, they have consumers sign the liability forms, and many of them have never, to my knowledge, have ever sued the organization. They're usually very grateful and having an equipment given to them for free. So usually that's not a problem, but it's good to know where some of the forms and documents are, and you can go there and find more information, just in case you want to know more. So thanks, Alan, for that. We have a minute left. Do you guys have any questions or anything that do you guys want me to send out the documents that I showed today? Would that be helpful? But you would need to contact me because I don't have your email addresses. Or we can try to push out to those who register. But my email address, I will type it down. In the meantime, if you guys have any questions, raise your hand. Or you can just type a question. But you can always, if you want the documents that I showed today, you can just send me an email and email it to you. If you later on think of a question, or you could just send me an email as well, and I hope to be able to answer. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you so much for coming. Our next best practice session will be on January 24th from 2 to 3 p.m. I hope you found this session very useful, that it will bring you, back for the next session. Again, thank you so much for attending.